Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another episode of Into the Fray, hovering over you like a black triangle in a deserted field. Visit the mothership at intothefrayradio.com. There you can find all the episodes, the blog posts, ITF gear, and sign up for the free guest newsletter. The weekly show is, of course, always free and available in all podcatchers, but if you'd like to support the show, and why wouldn't you, go to the website and click Become an Insider, which in turn gets you extra content each and every month. And by the way, if you would be so kind as to leave a rating and review in your listening platform of choice, Cosmic Karma shall be yours. Be part of the discussion by joining the interactive ITF Facebook group. Follow on Twitter at ITF_radio and Instagram. If you have an experience that you'd like to share, email Shannon at intothefrayradio.com or call the hotline anytime at 844-866-3366. Thanks so much for listening. Now, if you would be so kind, buckle up your safety belts. Put that tray table in the upright position. Liftoff is upon us.
That would be helpful. Yeah, we've had snow flurries twice in the last 2 weeks here, so it's kind of odd. It didn't stick, of course, but, it's just kind of one of those things where you're like Nevada's a little drunk right now, I guess, snow flurries. So
yeah, right.
You're like, get well soon, because we don't need any snow. So... You started out by emailing me and saying that you heard about Into the Fray through Derek's Monsters Among Us podcast. So, of course, a big shout out to him and his listeners over there, which they're incredible. He gets wonderful stories and people calling in. He can always use more stories, though, guys, because I don't know if you all know this, but he's gone to a full hour format now. And I know he's burning through the calls like nobody's business. So just throwing that out there. You are in Arkansas. And before we get into your sighting, I think we'll cover the Bigfoot stuff first, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your state. It's definitely got its share of activity. You were saying in your email that a third of the state is heavily forested, and that's where you're from. And then another third is swampland. So that's an interesting dichotomy of terrain there. So, what about this swampland? How much is actually, as far as reports, do you know how many reports come out of that type of terrain there in Arkansas?
Well, so there's quite a bit that is swamp that's down in southern Arkansas. But if you've ever heard of the folk monster, that's down in southern Arkansas, and it's a little bit more swampy down there. Not as bad as what Louisiana and parts of Texas and Mississippi could be, but that's where I think the biggest Bigfoot sighting that anyone's ever seen come out of Arkansas, especially since there was a movie made out of it. Where I'm from, it's just heavily forested. It's between I'm in where I grew up is in the Ozark Mountains. So, you never know what you're going to see. But there's even more like swamplands can consist of some forests and lots of trees as well. So I think that this could be just a plethora place for all Bigfoot sightings. I don't think as many go reported as what there probably could be, but I haven't extensively looked into it.
You know, it's funny, you also mentioned in your email that people there, it's quite taboo and you don't really talk about stuff like that. And I know that, you know, you mentioned basically Fouke, right? Fouke, Arkansas, very famous, Legend of Boggy Creek. I know that it took Lyle Blackburn a really long time to build up trust with the folks out there. And now he's kind of, you know, he's the Fouke guy. I mean, he's written the books on it. He's personally friends with a lot of the folks that live there, the locals, and he's got their trust, which goes a long way. I mean, what about your specific area? So you kind of feel like you're not really going to be very welcomed if you start talking about your sighting.
It's not, you really don't want to be telling people that what you've seen, especially back where I'm from. You know, a lot of people back where I'm from, it's, not saying anything about like bad about Christianity at all, but it's a heavily Christian area. And so believing in something else other than the Christian faith, it's kind of taboo. And no one really wants to step out of line. So I'm really not trying to talk bad about Christianity or anything. It's more of there's a stigma against anything that's not, you know, related to the Christian Bible and Christian faith.
Now, I know your sister was there during your encounter, and we'll get into that, but what about the rest of your family? Did they know that you guys had this sighting?
So, when my sister and I saw it, we actually had no clue what it was. We knew it was huge, and we went and told our mom we have no idea what we saw, but there was something there. And which it's okay to tell my mom that kind of stuff, but she did tell us, you know, you might want to keep this between us. Because, I mean, she was looking out for us in the sense of she didn't want us to be ostracized. But she kind of knows, but I've never really gone into the details. I know for a fact that my older sister and I, we've never talked about it again to each other. And she's only told maybe 3 or 4 people in her life. I've told more just because I'm a lot more open to it now, but I started talking about it about a year ago. And I was 14 when that happened, so it's been almost 10 years.
Okay. Yeah, you guys were younger than I thought you were. You were only 14. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So
she was 16 driving.
Okay, so she'd basically just started to drive, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one way to get indoctrinated on how not to freak out while you're driving your car, right? Holy cow.
Right.
Poor things. I mean, how have you felt since you've kind of come out and talked about it for the last year?
It's kind of strange. It kind of feels like I'm taking charge of, you know, what's actually going on. Instead of like sitting there questioning and being terrified, I'm actually going out and listening to other people's stories. And I feel a lot more comfortable with it, although I know I still get a little uneasy if I ever go back down through that road again. Just because I'm halfway expecting it or something else to pop out. But I mean, I don't stop myself, but I know that if I get a bad feeling about a road, I tend to want to not go down it because you never know exactly what's going to happen.
Do you get that feeling often?
I'd say I've gotten that feeling twice within the past year. Of course, I'm not saying that, you know, I mean, who knows what that feeling could be referring to. It could be referring to maybe there's a car accident and your just gut feeling is saying, don't go down that way, you're going to, see something or you're going to get into something. I don't think it's just paranormal in that sense. I think that's your subconsciousness telling you might lose control or you might see something.
Yeah, I bet when
if that makes sense.
Oh, no. Yeah, totally. I'm sure that when you go down that specific stretch of road, that your eyes are just probably just flicking around and your head's on a swivel and just like, okay. So what I'm getting is the sense that you maybe wouldn't want to see something like that again.
I would classify myself as a scaredy cat. So while I'm kind of open to seeing something, at the same time, I kind of don't.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people probably wish that they could see something like this, but I'm more in tune to the uncertainty of what could happen if you see it again. I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to come after you, but what if it does? What's going to happen? What are you going to do? Are you going to end up crashing? Are you going to... So I would say I'm a scaredy cat and probably would rather stay away from something like that.
And that's okay. That's a completely honest and very human answer. I don't have any qualms with that answer. I totally understand. So are you a hiker, or do you go fishing or camping, or maybe you would be, but since you've seen this and know it's out there, you just don't do that kind of stuff?
I do like to go hiking. Northwest Arkansas is a gorgeous place to go hiking, so shout out to that if anybody ever wants to go and do something like that. It's a really wonderful place to go hiking and to go camping. I would be totally fine going hiking and camping as long as it's like hiking during the day and you're actually camping at a campsite.
Mm-hmm.
Not where you're just like stuck out in the middle of the woods by yourself or with just very few people. I would be okay doing that, but at the same time, there has to be fire going at all times.
Yeah.
You cannot be alone. But that's just kind of my rule set in that.
No, I think that's smart for anybody. I just think that, so no, like, throwing the single man tent in the old backpack and, hoofing out in the middle of nowhere. Or at least if you're going to do that, be armed or something, for God's sake. Yeah. I don't blame you. That's it. The woods can be a truly creepy ass place at night. And actually the desert is equally so. It's just each has its own kind of special creepiness to it. So, all right. Well, everyone's probably like, all right, Shannon, shut up. Let her tell about her sighting. They're going to get annoyed with me. They're like 12 minutes in and you're just, Shannon's beating around the bush. So you and your sister 10 years ago were driving in the car.
So we were driving from our grandmother's house back to ours. And instead of taking the highway back around, we decided to cut through in this old highway that's been kind of decommissioned as a highway. They made more of a straighter path for a different way. So we went back onto this old highway, and a lot of that is going up and down the hills and down around in valleys. So we were going down one of the bigger hills, and we were down into a valley portion of it. To the right, it was straight up a mountain, the hillside, and then down to the left, it went down into the valley. It was probably about a good 8-foot drop still down into this field that was next to us. As we were rounding the corner, this thing was walking up to the road. It was very slow and stopped partially up the small hill to get onto the road and just watched us. My sister and I were driving through, and we kind of kept our heads straight, but we could see it still in our peripheral, and as we were going, it just kind of moved its head along, watching us. We didn't exactly feel threatened, but it watched us. And I could tell it was huge. It was, I would have to say, at least 8.5 feet tall. Because it was still way above the vehicle that we were in, and we were in a little bit of a higher up vehicle. You couldn't really tell if it was fur or grass or like leaves that was on it. It was just there. It was kind of like twilight, so we could still kind of see, but we didn't see like exactly, if it was brown or gray or black or anything.
Okay.
And so we just rounded back up to the top of the mountain, and we sat quiet for about 5 minutes, and finally my older sister asked me if I had seen it. I said yes, and we didn't talk the rest of the ride home.
So the car that you're in, and you may not even know if she was running these or not, it was twilight. Did you guys have the headlights on? Do you know?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Do you think it could see you in the car? Like it could actually watch or discern there's two people in the car?
Yeah, I have no idea. Its head moved with the car. And I was scared thinking that what if it did come after us but I don't know if it could see the two of us. The headlights were on. It was twilight, so maybe. I don't know what the eyesight of a Sasquatch would be like.
So how far, when you're at the closest point to this creature, how far was he, do you think, from you guys, from the vehicle?
Maybe, I don't know exactly how wide the roadways are, but we were on the right side of the lane, and he was right at the edge of the left side of the lane.
Oh, okay. All right. He was on the other side of the road. Gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So your sister was the one that really kind of got maybe the bigger eyeful.
Yep. I know that still, she doesn't want to really tell anyone about it, so right. I know that bothers her a lot.
Yeah. And that's incredible. You guys have never, ever spoken ever since those words just, did you see it? And you both were like, yeah. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't talk to each other about it. I think because for me, it wouldn't be too much of a big deal, but I think that it would open some floodgates back for her. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't want to put her through something that would bother her again or make her feel scared.
So what was this thing's build? 8.5 feet. That's pretty damn tall. I would guess that would be a male, but it's only a guess. What did you get a sense of gender?
I think it was a he. Anytime I've told it, I've always said he. Mm-hmm. So maybe subconsciously I got a sense of it was a male, but definitely extremely broad shoulders, and just a long torso along with long legs. So maybe that's, which, obviously women can be broad-shouldered and be long-torsoed and long legs as well, but I just always had, I've always said he whenever I've retold it.
Was his arms hanging down at his sides?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So he was pretty relaxed. He wasn't, he didn't seem tense.
The only time, well, he was walking up and then stopped as soon as he saw the car. So I think it wasn't really super tense, but he just was watching and making sure that we weren't going to stop or anything.
You're we're definitely not going to stop. Don't worry, young man. We're going to go. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So those few seconds or the few steps that you actually got to see it walk, which is fascinating. What was its gait like? Was it smooth? I know it's walking up a hill. It's a little different than watching it walk on flat land, but what would you describe that as?
I only got to see it for a second, so it was just more of he was just walking up the hill. like a normal human being, how they would step up onto a bigger portion, kind of dig their foot in, and then that's what I would think it would be like.
Right.
I mean, definitely walk like a human in that sense, but...
Now the big question, and considering the time of day and how quick it was, the face. Did you get any details out of his face?
I did not get any details of the face.
Which might be a good thing, right?
Yeah, I think that is like a good thing. Or if I did look at his face, I've been so scared and traumatized that I've never remembered it.
Right.
Which I think I would be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you hear those stories of the ones that look a little more human-like, and I'm like, I just wouldn't. I mean, it would be scary either way, I think. But I think that for me personally, just as conjecture, I raise my hand and go, I don't really want to see the human-looking one close up and know that's what I'm looking at. I think that might screw up my, I love hiking and fishing and camping kind of a thing. And I'm like, I'm good on going to Salt Fork. I mean, I'll go there during the day, but I'm never camping there again. You know, if I ever go back to Salt Fork and camp. But something about that human looking face thing just really screws with me. And I'm like, okay, well, how can you really say that's just a big old ape? I don't know. I mean, I guess it could be, but.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah. I didn't realize it. Like, pretty cool. You walked up the hill like that. I didn't know that yet. That is a really cool detail. So he's 8.5 feet tall and his head's just on a swivel watching you guys. Do you actually, I don't know if there's like, if it's a bend in the road and then you just lose sight of him, but did you actually like turn around in your seat until you lost sight of him, or you guys were just kind of so traumatized you just face forward?
I think that we were just shocked enough that we just faced forward and just tried to pretend like it wasn't there, or making sure that there wasn't another one in front of us. Because, in Northwest Arkansas, you see one deer, there's probably going to be another one up ahead of you. Mm-hmm. So it's not that, that might have been just in our heads, like, keep your head straight, don't look back. You might see something you don't want to see. Because if I looked back and saw it running after us, oh my gosh, I would have been so terrified. And with my sister being a new driver and we were on a really curvy and windy road, that would have been horrible. Right.
Bad timing for that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you before you kind of like, okay, I'm kind of accepting what I saw? And maybe you hadn't talked about this yet, but how did you get that measurement of the 8.5 feet? Because you went off the vehicle or whatever. Was that kind of an instant thought, or is this kind of come in later as far as the details and how tall he was?
This is going to sound so farm girl-ish, but I've always kind of had a sense of how to guess like heights and weights, just because we used to have cattle, and we would either be in class or we would be at the farm, and we'd try to like determine what the height and weight of a steer is that's maybe going to market or that we're going to go and take to show at the fair. So I guess it was just kind of like a automatic reaction for me to guess the height of it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's cool. I like that.
And it's never changed. I know that sometimes like height, you can think about it and think, oh, maybe it was 9 feet or maybe it was just 7.5, but it's never changed for me. It's always been 8.5 feet tall. So, I think I just immediately realized, wow, that thing's huge.
Right.
And kind of guessed at it.
So you said you couldn't really discern the color because it was twilight, which I totally understand. What about length of the hair? Do you get a sense that it's the same all over? Shorter in some places?
That's the portion that's a little bit more fuzzy to me. Mm-hmm. I can't think about, I can't exactly recall, and so that's why I don't want to, say something definite, and then it, that was not true. I don't really know for sure. It was about 10 years ago, so...
Right. Yeah, no, that's totally fine. I appreciate you just being honest, being like, I don't know. More people need to just use those 3 words, right? Trying to think of... What, we can't ask your sister, and she's obviously maybe, even a little bit more traumatized than you, because I guess I'm trying to put myself in her shoes. And, you know, if my sibling was sitting next to me and I'm a new driver and now there's this damn thing across, you know, the other side of the road on my side of the car. Granted, it wasn't right there, but that's close enough. If it's 8.5 feet tall and that big. Yeah. Her feeling might have been much more strong in a negative way, because she felt like, oh my God, what am I going to do if ... right? To protect me, to protect my sister. Karlee's over here. But what was your feeling like right off the bat? I know you're kind of in a shock feeling, and it's 10 years ago when this happened, but do you initially just go, I mean, is there terror? Are you kind of just bewildered? Do you remember the initial feeling of actually seeing that and trying, you know, your brain's just trying to wrap itself around what you just witnessed?
I think for me, I was scared in a sense, but at the same time, what kind of went in my head later on when I told my mom was, holy crap, these things are real. And, you know, kind of what I'd always heard was that, oh, people who see Bigfoot or people who say they've seen Bigfoot, they're just liars and they're making it up. They just want to have a good story. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it kind of opened my eyes into the sense of all of these myths and legends that you've ever heard. Every story that you've ever heard about something, maybe it's not just some kind of wives' tale that someone else has told. Maybe it really has happened. People have seen it, and that's where the warnings come from. I mean, it kind of opened up my world a little bit in the sense of there's more than just us, than what we just see. So I think kind of wonderment kind of opened up a little bit more in me and wanting to question it more. But that was hard to do that while I was living back in my hometown. Now where I'm in a bigger place living now, I can open up a little bit more and kind of understand. Of course, I don't think podcasts or I didn't even know anything about this kind of stuff back then. And actually, I didn't know about any of these podcasts and start listening to this until it was last May. So I've not even been listening to podcasts and opening up way more until, back then.
So I know that you'd rather not see something like this again, and I can totally understand, but do you feel, I think I know your answer, but do you feel lucky to have seen it and have confirmed that, oh my gosh, there really is some cool stuff out there we don't understand? I do feel lucky for that. There's actually one person's story who I listened to. I can't remember. I've been listening so much. I've been binge listening everything I can. But she said, they allow you to see them. It's not necessarily just you all of a sudden looking over and there's something. It's like you've been allowed to see this. So I kind of feel more fortunate in that aspect that, okay, this has opened up my world. I'm not just a weird kid who thinks that this stuff could be happening, but I mean, I might still be considered a weirdo. I don't know, but no one's quite told me that yet. It's cool to be the weirdo, though.
We
have our little patches and it says I'm grade A weirdo. I know that once I finally embraced it, I felt better.
T-shirt.
Right?
Yeah.
Grade A weirdo.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
New design ideas.
Yeah. So what about your mom? Now I know that when you told your mom, she's like, look, you got to keep this kind of on the down low. You can't be telling people that. But did she kind of expound upon Bigfoot at all? Just the subject, or, oh gosh, so-and-so talked about this, seeing this or that back whenever. Did she expound upon it at all when you told her?
No. Not really. So my mom was raised kind of in a different church life, and so she's a lot more open to the aspects of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like, she does believe in curses. She does believe in things happening like that. And it's not necessarily that she doesn't talk about it. She's just extremely selective when she talks about it. So, I mean, I can tell her some of the things I've seen or some of the things I've listened to and experienced, but unless she feels like it's the right time to talk about it, she will not talk about it. So, in that sense, you know, I think it's more of like she's just guarding herself and everyone else.
Right.
In that sense.
Well, and I can understand being a mom, and then your kids come to you, and you guys were still pretty young at that point, and both terrified. I can see where a mom is just kind of trying just to tamp down and calm down the situation. So I'm sure inside she was probably going, oh my gosh. You know, I think that, you know, PTSD comes in all kinds of forms and happens to all kinds of different people. And I mean, the situation could be, it doesn't always have to be a war situation. Yeah, I could just see where maybe your sister's got a touch of that. I could totally see where that might happen, because your worldview just shifted greatly and within milliseconds, right?
Yeah.
I think that's all I've got with the Bigfoot stuff. Is there anything else that you want to add about that story, or?
I don't think so. It's pretty general. It's kind of like it's not some fantastic story or anything, but, you know, I
think it's a pretty cool story.
I think we covered it.
Yeah, no, no, it's not just some little tiny story. Yeah, I remember you saying that in the email, like, oh no, this thing is great. I mean, road sighting is kind of, I think in a lot of ways, not that I'm diminishing it at all, but I think it's kind of, I'm not trying to diminish the shock of it, is what I'm trying to say. Spit it out, Shannon.
Fine.
But I think it's one of the most benign ways to see these things versus you and your sister out by yourselves hiking in the middle of freaking nowhere, and then it just peeks out or steps out from behind a tree. You know, that's a completely different situation, and we've heard those tales, and I think it was, have you heard Kathy Strain speak yet on any podcasts?
I don't think so.
Yeah, she's written a couple books. The name of her book is, of course it's going to escape me, like it usually does. I will link it in the show notes, everyone, after I Google it. She retells a story that I think it happened to her husband. They were out, I think it's their location, whatever it's called, and they're out for Bigfootery. And she says that her husband, there's a bunch of them out doing their Bigfoot stuff. I think it's daytime. He's walking around trees, and something happens where I think they think that part of a limb is ripped off of a tree, and they go off to check that out, right? And he walks back the way that he came after he checks out this noise. I'm going to forget the details, but the broad stroke is coming, and it's very creepy. So he walks back to where he started from, and he walks over a log, and he turns around and he's like, that log wasn't there before, and it was a freaking Bigfoot just laying on the, on the ground. And you're just going, oh my freaking God, are we that inept in the woods? And the truth is we are. We just don't. I mean, we try our hardest, and God knows we love going out there, but we're just not built to pick up on little things like that. Except it wasn't a little thing. It was, a freaking Sasquatch that he thought was a massive log, and he just steps over the thing. I don't know if it was physically like just him and the Bigfoot, or if there was like a second, log that he actually stepped on, but he kind of went, oh, like it registered a little later, like that log wasn't there before. Oh yeah, it's freaking Bigfoot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. My mouth is agape. Like, I have chills.
I'll try to. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah. I mean, how close they can get, and we're just not built for that terrain. It doesn't usually register that quickly. So I'll have to find that, and I'll try to send it to you and find it. I'll do some digging, because that's a really good one. A good example of just Yeah, they're just Liam Neesons of the woods. They're just little badasses,
Yeah,
you know?
They will find you. And
yeah.
can kill you. They might not, but they can.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's kind of proves my point to myself why you probably don't want to see him again, Karlee.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Paul Hayes is another one. He's in Ohio, and I still need to get him on. God, I have such like this long list, and I keep going, oh, it's past due, and I'm just always behind. Paul Hayes was out. I think he was out with his son, and then the Bigfoot steps out from behind a tree, but it gives no, it doesn't care that they're both just like, it's like a standoff. They're staring at each other. It's quite close. And actually, I think I remember that Paul was like, okay, guess we're going to go first since you're not going to go. Like, it was a long kind of a thing. And the Bigfoot's just like, what? I'm here. I'm not moving. They're like standing like statues, right? Like they can stand from what we've heard. So still, it's just almost like they become a damn tree or something, right? Some inanimate object. But usually they're trying to hide from us and they don't have anything to do with us. But God forbid, and we have heard stories on other shows about these things getting a little spicy and a little feisty with humans. I don't really blame them. If they don't want to be seen or have anything to do with us. We're kind of a mess sometimes, and we're loud, and we're probably, we call them stinky. Some of them, sometimes. I bet we smell awful to them.
Probably. And there was the reason, so when I said I don't have a fantastic story, there's two stories that I've listened to that I was like, oh my gosh. One, I think it was from Derek's show, but a man was hunting in Louisiana, and he saw something. He was in his tree stand. He saw something across the way, and so he lifted up his gun and looked through the scope, and that was the Bigfoot. And the Bigfoot noticed that he was lifting his gun at him, so then he started chasing him. And to me, I'm like, yeah, you probably don't want to point a gun at them. They probably know what that's for.
Yeah.
And they're not going to appreciate it. Like, oh.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I know, that's a boomstick right there. You're not going to be, pointing that at me. I think the hunter stories are horrifying because they're usually out by themselves. I mean, that's the point of hunting. You got to go out, you got to be quiet, you got to sit there and wait. If you're bow hunting and you hear those stories of the bow hunters up in trees, right? And that's all they've got. I think if you shot a bow into one of those things, you're just going to piss it off.
And I mean, have you seen bear guns like in Alaska where they have like guns that are actually made for bears and for moose? I'm like, if you have like some kind of small 22 rifle, you're not going to be doing any damage. So all you're going to do is make it mad.
Yeah.
Oh, that always scares me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure because hunting's huge here, so I'm sure there's a lot of hunters here who have seen something like this and have never reported it. Because again, it's taboo.
That's I think that's it's an incredible point, and it's something that those of us that are really, really trying to look into this, it does get frustrating because that it's only a guess as to the percentage of people that actually report it. Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it not even 5%? We don't even know. But it would be great if more people would come forward, and that's why I always offer the anonymity if anybody wants it, because I do realize there is the ridicule factor. I mean, even once I came forward and told my story with the foreshadow things, there wasn't really that much blowback or anything, but you're just kind of like waiting for it because you're like, yeah, I totally get it. It's a weird freaking story, but it happens, so I don't know what else to do except just tell it how I remember it. So yeah, I think my sighting was just as long as yours, maybe a 5 count. It's not that long, but damn it, it's long enough. It changes everything. Yeah.
Actually, I had never heard of shadow people until I started listening to these podcasts and realized that I had seen them too. Because who knows what those things are? Like, you're just saying, oh, it's just a shadow. But it's crazy how much like your world opens up after something like this happens.
Yeah, and that's a good segue to jump into our next section with you. And it's a good point that you just brought up too, is because I have been asked many times, well, what did you see? Are they demons? I have no idea. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that they were demons. They could have been. It's just a guess. I mean, I just think I saw a glimpse into another side that's probably running alongside us all the time. But usually there's that veil there or whatever kind of thing, if it's a protector or we just are not open enough to see it all the time. And there was that glitch in the Matrix and boop, there they were for 5 seconds. I saw them plain as day in the middle of the damn day. I mean, it doesn't get any weirder than that. And,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I don't know how to explain that. I can't put a label on that. How in the world would I even begin to do that? So I don't pretend to be like, well, since I've been looking into this stuff for so and so long, now I have no clue. That's where those 3 words come in. I don't know. So, okay, yeah, let's talk a little bit about things that you've had going on with, seeing these things and some of these different dreams and nightmares that you've experienced.
Oh, okay. So I want to preface first, I do not believe that every nightmare that I have has been like something demonic or something, like with shadow people. I do not believe that at all. But, I'm not trying to sound like every single time you have a dream or a bad dream, then, you're being attacked. I don't believe that. So I wanted to first start off with, I listened to one of your episodes, which is actually part of the reason why I decided to call in. It was John Paul Capice.
Mm-hmm.
Did I say his name right?
Perfect. Yep.
Okay, cool. So I listened to, I think it was his first episode with you, and he was talking about the different classes of demons. And he had mentioned that one class of demons is the nightmares. And that so I looked into it just tiny bit. I swear I'm like not looking into this heavily. Like they cause persistent nightmares, and that's how they get their satisfaction or something. I don't know if that's even remotely correct, if I got that off the right website or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because good old Google can tell you anything.
That's right. Yeah, she does lie sometimes. Leads us astray.
So, my dreams, the nightmares, ever since I was a little kid, I've had these very consistent nightmares that kind of follow the same pattern. Sometimes it's a monster. Sometimes it's a blackness. Sometimes it's a plant. Holy crap, sometimes it's a plant. And I work with plants and I don't like that. Sometimes it can be a human. But every single dream, and they're so vivid. I have extremely vivid nightmares. I do go through sleep paralysis. I do have the exploding head syndrome. Major insomnia, but, what list of problems do I not have, of course? So it follows a pattern as I'm conscious, but I'm jumping from body to body in the dream. There's always at least 2 people, sometimes maybe 4, sometimes maybe 6, but I'm jumping into different people's perspectives. And I'll be chased at one point. I'll be the person who's getting attacked at one point. Sometimes I'm the demon. I'm in the demon's perspective. And then it always ends with me being a bystander who's either restrained or who literally cannot get in there in time, and the other person who's been attacked has been killed. And the demon always looks back at me, smiles, and then I just wake up upset because I couldn't save the other person. But it always ends with me not being the one who's attacked, but the one who can't help the other person. And that, to me, felt like, okay, that's where its gratification comes from.
Right.
Is that it makes me feel helpless.
Do you know the other person?
No, actually. There's only been one dream where I thought I knew the other person, but it ended up not being that person. Sometimes it can be like an adult who I've never met. Maybe it's someone who I've subconsciously passed in life, but there was one where it was a little girl who was being attacked, and but they all, like, I mean, they're very vivid, so I can tell you like all the details of it. I mean, I'll be in places that I've never seen before. So, like in an ice cave. I've never been in an ice cave. I've never been to like Antarctica or something that, you know, I could tell you the details of this ice cave. I've just seen this ice cave where there's this demon that's living down in the bottom of this lake and is coming up to get people. There's a water treatment area, or not water treatment. It was like, it's a water waste. But, you know, they like put out their waste in this pond. Or it could be someone's kitchen. There's a kitchen, and this little girl is being shoved up against the refrigerator and is having her, like, stomach ripped.
God.
So, I mean, the only reason why, so this is why I think that there's something wrong here. You know, why there's something. For one thing, the consistency of these nightmares. They all follow the exact same pattern. The other thing is that my mom, when she was open and talked to me a little bit about this, almost every woman on my mom's side of the family has been plagued with some kind of nightmares. And normally what it was is that it would happen for a certain amount of time and then it would end. Mine has been throughout my entire life, but almost every single woman in my family has had these nightmares. And I actually spoke with Ian and Brennan from the Ghost Story guys. And Ian had mentioned that it might not be like a curse or something, because we had kind of like hypothesized, what if it's a curse? What if it's, you know, something else?
Right.
He had thought that it might not be a curse, but be more of like a sensitivity to something in that kind of realm that the women in my family just have a sensitivity to.
Well, definitely is a genetic thing from the sounds of it. And is it definitely only on the women that it's plaguing? Never the men?
No. But of course, at the same time, these are men who are raised in rural Arkansas.
Right, they wouldn't talk about that.
They're
right,
tough men, you know. Yeah.
Right, that wouldn't be taboo. They would just be like, oh, well, that's so girly to talk about, or whatever they might think, right? It's interesting, though, with you saying how vivid the details are. Wouldn't it be interesting if, and this is really crazy speculation, but that's just kind of what we do, wouldn't it be interesting if you were actually like remote viewing an actual cave somewhere that you had never even been to? And wouldn't it be amazing to be able to verify that somehow, right?
That would be so cool, but at the same time, terrifying.
Well, yeah. Yes.
And actually, so I had just learned about remote viewing very recently, and my boss is Buddhist, and so she told me that a lot of people who have trained themselves to do remote viewing, that she totally believes in it and thinks it's real, but they're like monks, that, you know, and so like there can be some people who are, you know, sensitive to that, and they can, you know, do that. But I don't know. Part of me doesn't want to know if I can do that. But the other part of me, that would be incredible. Like, you know, all of a sudden I'm sensitive to these actual places that have something in, like, I feel like I could write like a movie script that, you know, all these awesome haunted movies everyone would want to watch. Oh, and that was something else that I wanted to mention. Being a kid, growing up, plagued with nightmares, I never watched anything scary. I never watched anything that could... The scariest thing I watched was Scooby-Doo. So...
Where it's always just a bad guy, a real guy.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it always amazed me that I could conjure up these details without ever watching
Right.
anything actually scary.
No reference point for it. Yeah, wouldn't it be incredible if... So you're talking about the monks, right? And what they can do is they're not asleep, but they quiet their brain. They'll sit in a certain place. And it's the same thing that remote viewers do. What if you trained that side of yourself, you could do that while you were awake, and maybe, you wouldn't have to be in this dream state. I mean, maybe you are remote viewing an actual ice cave that had a demon. I mean, we don't know, right? It could be. Maybe when you're in the sleep state, the demon is an addition of your mind's eye and your imagination while you're asleep. I just wonder, again, crazy conjecture, but if you did that during the day and you could train it to where you didn't have to be fully asleep, what would change, basically, is what I'm just wondering. What would change as far as the experiences and what you saw, and would you always be jumping from body to body and entity to body? And I don't know. I mean, that's wild conjecture, absolutely. But I just find it really fascinating that you're able to pull those details after you wake even, and you remember these years later, which most people don't usually.
That's actually really interesting, because it just made me think of, I'm going to go down a rabbit trail. It just made me think of, what if I did that while I was awake? Would I be less helpless in these dreams?
Right.
Would I be, I don't think that, obviously my physical body wouldn't be able to do anything about it, but maybe, I would kind of have more control over the situation, in the fact that, what if you could tell it to stop? Or, kind of oh my gosh, I'm going to sound like a dork.
No, you're fine.
On Dora the Explorer, they go swipe or no swiping.
Yeah.
And it stops the fox from swiping things.
Yeah, you'd have more
control. What if it's
control,
something you could tell them, quit, go away. This is not for you. You are not allowed to be here. Yeah,
that's interesting. I like that. You kind of would have more of a bigger hammer, right? A little bit more control with it. Did you ever hear Ian, speaking of Ian and Brennan at the Ghost Story Guys? Ian told us when he came on my show about the brown chair in the corner. And I kind of was shocked by that. And there was the whole thing where he had never been to this place before. And then I can't remember the details. I never can. Damn it. This is horrible. See, this is when I try to relate a story and it doesn't come out right. But basically he can remote view, basically. And when he told this brown chair in the corner story, that just blew his friend away. And they're like, you've never even been here. How the hell did you know about that brown chair in the corner? He's like, relaying details. And he's like, well, yeah. And then you walk off the porch, and then off to the right is his farmhouse back behind the trees. And she's like, what is happening? How are you doing this?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, it's interesting to wonder how amazing our brains really are, and we just have no freaking clue, for the most part, how to tap into that.
Well, that is really interesting, because I can remember details from these dreams, where the chain link fence is broken, where the magnets on the refrigerator was placed, where the stalactites and stalagmites were in this ice cave. And that's really interesting, because I definitely would never want me to say, I'm to Ian Gibbs level. No, not at all. But that's interesting how, that very specific detail, I can remember my specific details. But
I just wonder if the next time you have a dream like this, and it sounds like you have a lot of them, but I wonder if you could kind of, and that would be really hard to do, because who knows how much we really have control about what we can do in our dreams. But if you can try to make yourself go outside the ice cave, and you find a sign and it's called such and such cave and wherever the hell, and then you could somehow Google it, right? But you'd probably I would have a heart attack, of course, if I was able to figure out what cave I was in my dream. And then let's say Google actually hits proper, and then there's decent pictures or video, and by God, there's some mark that you saw in your, I would pass out. Personally, but I just wonder if, there's any way to verify any of that. It's pretty cool.
That would be incredible and terrifying at the same time.
Exactly.
So I agree with you. I probably would pass out too.
Yeah. Like, oh, I'll just never sleep again because I'm doing really weird shit in my dream. And, yeah, so I can, like, astral travel while I'm asleep and go to real places. Holy crap. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Can you imagine? That would just be...
No, I can't imagine.
I mean, but, you know, the military uses people like that all the time. They don't really talk about it much anymore, but I'm sure they still use remote viewers. Law enforcement uses psychics.
Who knows what they do?
But those folks can travel without their bottoms leaving their chairs, you know, so I don't know. Pretty fascinating. No, go ahead.
So we can probably segue to the shadow people stuff if you want to.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, I have very vivid dreams. I had no clue whatsoever about shadow people until, maybe just a few months ago. I'd never heard of anything about them. I never understood or, thought this was a thing. When I heard about this, all of a sudden, this dream that I had when I was a kid came back. And I couldn't really tell if it was a dream or not, but I was laying in bed. This was the time when my younger sister and I were sharing a room together. But I was laying in bed, and all of a sudden I just wake up. And there is a shadow, like a really, really black shadow of a man standing at the foot of my bed. It wasn't my dad. I could instantly tell it wasn't my dad because, one, my dad would never do something that creepy. And two, like, he didn't have the shape of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
I looked over and saw that my sister was still asleep and that she was still there. And I looked back at the shadow person, and then the next thing I know, it's morning. So I was like, maybe I just passed out again. But, there was a man standing at the foot of my bed. I don't know if I felt fear during that time, but it was fascinating because I went and told I got up and I went and told my mom and my older sister, and they started freaking out because both my mom and older sister woke up hearing cabinet doors slamming in our house.
That night?
That night.
Oh.
Which I think was explained. This is going to sound redneck, but there was a barn kind of behind our house, maybe like not even a quarter of a mile away, but it was used to make meth and it had exploded.
Oh, God.
So they think maybe that was what the cabinet's rattling was, or at least they just kind of like shook it off that way. But it really scared them before they knew about the explosion, that I had seen a shadow of a man standing above me, and that there were cabinets slamming in the house. More than likely the cabinets were explained by the explosion, but
strange timing though.
That doesn't.
I mean,
yeah,
for
I know,
you to
like
see the shadow figure
timing
while the meth lab is exploding, that's also kind of weird. I don't know if that's tied in at all, but it's strange timing.
I don't know. I know that sounds so like hillbilly-ish.
No. Maybe the shadow man is he's just the manifestation of all that meth and all that, like that's just how it.
Yeah.
That was silly. Just never mind me. So what about specific features of this guy? Did you notice anything, or he was just pitch black shape?
Well, pitch black of shape, but the shape of him, like I said, it wasn't the shape of my dad. So I think that's the only reason why I really realized the shape of him.
Mm-hmm.
He was tall and very, like, lanky, like skinny.
Yeah.
And my dad's a tall guy. He's 6'1", but this thing was like 6'3", 6'4", like taller than my dad. So, that's all that I could tell. There was nothing that, like, there was no facial features. There was no clothing on him. It was just this black void of a person standing at the foot of my bed.
That sounds familiar.
He kind of,
made
me like, when I was a kid, I used to say, like, he just felt like a lumberjack, which I know sounds weird. Normally, like, lumberjacks wouldn't be tall and lanky. I mean, yeah, they might be tall, but they're not necessarily lanky. I just always felt like he was a lumberjack. And that might be just a stupid detail that, you know, doesn't really need to be said, but then again, that makes me scared because lumberjacks wield axes, so I'm like, oh my god.
Right? At least he wasn't holding anything like that. At least not you could see. That would be, you'd be done. Another situation, you're like, never mind, I don't ever need sleep again, thanks.
Right.
No, that's an interesting detail. And see, sometimes it's those things that we think are so peculiar. I mean, it's strange sighting anyway, right? But those little nuggets like that, when you throw them out there and just people listen, you just never know what might come back. And someone's like, "Oh my god, I totally had the same feeling about such and such that happened to me." So you never know. Those are the little things that are always good to throw out there. So with him, get this feeling that just get the word lumberjack. Did you get a positive vibe or you get a negative vibe? You know, sometimes when people see these things, they're instantly like filled with dread and fear and terror.
I don't think I was filled with dread, fear, and I don't know, because in this instance, I don't think I was. I think I was just like, matter of fact, oh, there's a man standing above me. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing I know, it's morning. The next instance, was terror. It was extremely terrifying. But no, in this one, I don't think I did. Of course, I was young. I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. Mm. So, I mean, I was definitely elementary age. But I don't know. I can't remember a detail of feelings terrified. And I think if I was terrified, I would feel that again.
Right.
As I'm telling it, you know.
So, you know, I'm sure I know you haven't been listening to podcasts that long, but you hear a lot of times in some of these instances where it's exactly like you. You don't really remember falling back asleep, but surely you did, because the next thing you know, it's morning and the whole thing is over. But it just seems so odd, you know, but that's a very common occurrence, is there's this freaky ass thing standing at the foot of your bed or whatever, and then you just, the person goes, well, I just roll over and went to sleep. Because I think I've heard Ian make this point. It's a really good point. He's like, because if you don't roll over and go to sleep and just go on with your normal, what you need to do, and you're like going to identify it as something really, really weird, or if you get up, then you're acknowledging that it really happened, and maybe your brain just cannot deal with that, right? So maybe just going to sleep is what you have to do. At that age,
I couldn't deal.
Yeah, right.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that he was totally right with that. I couldn't deal with it at that time.
Because can you imagine if, I don't know, because we don't normally hear stories like this, but can you imagine if 7 or 8 years old and you're like, okay, well, I need to get by him because maybe I don't know, maybe the house is on fire, or maybe you want to go cry to your mom or your dad and you're terrified, and you go the other way. You don't go to sleep. You actually walk by. Can you imagine if it would like interact with you at that point, or, you know, or do what the Sasquatch did? It just kind of turns its head and watches you walk by. You'd be done. That would be too much. Mm-hmm. Too much.
So it's funny that you say it interacts. Mm-hmm. Because the next dream it did interact. Oh. Or what I think was a dream.
Okay. So did you think that this one was a dream, and then this next one, I mean...
I don't think the first one was a dream. I mean, because I remember waking up. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you know, you could like think of it like a movie, like you're waking up, something horrible happens, and then like all of a sudden you're actually waking up again. Right. So that could have definitely happened. I'm not saying that, but I really don't think I was asleep for that one.
Well, yeah, let's hear about the one that actually terrified you then.
Well, and with that, I'm not entirely sure, because it had gotten to the point with the nightmares a few months ago that I started having panic attacks and would all of a sudden be having a panic attack from a nightmare that I had.
That's terrible.
I would be standing, you know. So with this one, I was laying in bed and I had just fallen asleep. And I actually researched this, like, apparently a nightmare is when you're in REM sleeping or coming out of REM, and then a night terror is when you're starting to go to sleep, which could be good old Google might, be
Right.
telling me wrong. But I had just fallen asleep, and I started hearing this motorish kind of sound, which at first didn't faze me at all because my house, I'm backed up to the interstate.
Mm-hmm.
So in my room, I could hear trucks and motorcycles throughout, and like police sirens all throughout the night. But all of a sudden, I just start hearing this motor thing, and I'm like not understanding. And then there are these two shadow people above me, and they're talking to me. And they're like, "Oh, you need to get up and hide." And I was like, "What?" And after they're like, and they start taunting me a little bit. So like, they're telling me to get up and hide, but they're taunting me, saying, "You're not going to get away." And then I started to understand what the motor sound was behind my head, and it was the sound of a chainsaw behind my head.
Good Lord, woman.
And I know, I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh.
I was paralyzed in bed. Like, I knew that my body was in bed. So I was running around the house, trying to hide, and these shadow people were like, telling me, "Oh, hide here, hide here." And then they'd be like, "We're going to go tell him that he's coming for you, and like, where to find you?" And so I'm like trying to run and hide. And so like, I know that my body is like still in bed, but I'm still like moving around and hiding. And then you know how like dreams will sometimes cut to a different scene?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like how in movies, it'll just like, you're here one second, then all of a sudden you're somewhere else another second.
Right.
So the next moment that I think of, like, that I'm right there, is that I'm in my truck driving, trying to get away. And this was at the time when I had this massive truck. It was like 3/4 ton Dodge Ram diesel truck.
Nice.
But I'm in this truck, and I'm driving down the interstate, getting to my parents' condo, which they only live like 10 minutes away, but that's where I was going. And then it cuts again, and I'm like talking to my mom, and I'm crying and asking her what's real. And then all of a sudden it stops. Everything stops. And the next thing I know, I'm being woken up, and it's my mom waking me up. I had legitimately driven to my mom's house and talked to her, but I was in this dream state, and I don't hardly remember except for just these few pieces. And so like, this night terror turned into something 20 times worse because I legitimately unconsciously drove 10 minutes away on the interstate.
Oh my God. You really drove over there though. That's not part
I really
of the
drove
dream.
over there.
You don't remember
And
doing
so that's
it.
why I don't remember it at all. I just
my
remember
God.
this section of the interstate that I'm driving on, and then I remember talking to my mom, and the next thing I know, I'm woken up by my mom. And when she wakes me up, I'm terrified because I have no idea where I am. And so that's not happened again. That is probably the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me, though, because that also makes me think, was that chainsaw noise real? Were the shadow people real? Was I actually running up and hiding in my house? Like,
Right.
and
because you actually did end up driving, which was part of the dream, but lo and behold, you were not dreaming. Oh my God. I mean, what did your mom say when you finally came to? You're probably freaking out. I mean, did she say you said something when you came in the door? Were your eyes closed? I mean, what did she say?
she said that she had this full conversation with me, and that she, put me to bed, and she stayed with me there for a few minutes to make sure that I was asleep. And I didn't quite tell her about the whole I was asleep when I drove and when I got there, because I knew that would really upset her.
Okay, but what time was this? Would it have been weird for you just to show up at your mom's house at this time?
So I'm actually someone who goes to bed pretty early.
I
wake up very early.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, Karlee.
So, yeah. So it was actually, I had gotten to her place at 11 o'clock at night.
Okay, so that was a little awkward for her, right?
Yeah,
She's like, what the hell are you up for?
And, of course, apparently I had called her before I came over.
Okay.
But I don't remember the phone call at all. I did look back on my phone log, and I had called her.
How long was the call?
Like maybe 45 seconds.
Mm.
Like I said, hey, she said that I said, I just had a nightmare. I can't be alone. I'm coming to stay at your place tonight.
Okay.
And my mom has always known that I've had nightmares and night terrors. And I was that kid. I'm not embarrassed to say this anymore because now I realize how often this happens to kids, but probably not as long as it happened to me. But I slept with my mom until I was 12 years old.
Mm-hmm. I
couldn't help it. And finally, once I moved my sister into a room with me, everything was okay. But I don't know what happened. And so I actually did talk to a doctor. I didn't tell her the extent of everything, but I did tell her that I was having anxiety attacks after these nightmares, and that it was getting pretty bad. Because there were a couple more where I had a dream of, like, this was during, like, the clown apocalypse, back in 2016.
Yes.
Where I was sleeping and there was a clown face in the window.
Oh, God.
And so all of a sudden I just remember I was in the other room, like standing with my back to the wall and like watching everything around me. But I had no idea that I had gotten up and moved. And so, but I've never driven before, and I've not done it since. I moved my bed to a different spot where it's like my head is not at the windows anymore. My younger sister now lives with me, and her best friend lives with me too. So I feel more safe in that sense, but I kind of refuse to live alone anymore.
Yeah. Just
because I never want to get into a situation where I'm having to go somewhere to be comforted after one of these night terrors. So that kind of rounds that off.
Wow, I wasn't expecting the whole, you actually went for a drive during one of these terrifying things. That is, so during your searches, is there a name for that? Like, basically, you're literally acting out your dreams. You don't really realize it.
The only thing I've come close to was, like, sleepwalking.
Mm-hmm.
That people, or sometimes, like, people will sleep eat.
Right. That's a good disorder. I'll do that.
I would have rather done that.
Right. That's more kind of light and love and just donuts. Yay.
I don't know. I've not seen anything else. And so I am on, like, anxiety medication now just when I need it. And so, like, I've trained myself that whenever one of these dreams happen, I go and I can at least take a really, really small amount of anxiety medication, and I only take it whenever I need it. But I can do that, and then my body will calm down. My mind will stop doing the firing off sentences of get out, get out, get out, and, more thinking ideas. But, so I've not driven again. I hope I never do. But I have had to, like, warn, like, my sister and my other roommate, look, if something happens and, like, I'm having this nightmare and you hear me running around or you hear something, you might need to get up and check on me just in case.
Right. Yeah. Don't let me walk out the front door, at least.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting and terrifying that during the driving incident, those two entities were really poking and prodding and goading you. They were toying with you. It just seems like they were so active and a huge active part of you actually getting in that truck and driving to your mom's house. It's I just don't know what to make of that. If that really is 100% in your brain, then you're kind of going, why is my body turning on me like that, right?
Right, and it also makes you question, was it actually real?
Right.
Like,
that's what I mean. If that's all in your head, you're like, stop it. Freaking stop it, brain. Get your crap together, right? But on the other hand, you're like, well, maybe it's not all in my head, and maybe part of that was real, because it turned into a freaking real situation. That's for sure. I was not expecting that went for a drive thing. That is really intense.
Yeah. And I really hope that this doesn't happen to someone else, because that's what scares me. It's something that John Paul had mentioned in his episode he said that a demon's ultimate goal is to cause death.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never felt closer to that being a possibility than when that was in. And so that's why I was like, what if the shadow person was a demon? And that was just another portion of the demon dreams.
Right.
Where, but there's one time that where I was not necessarily asleep in bed, but I was kind of like the paralyzed dreaming, where it felt like there was a huge pressure on my chest.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like something or a horrible entity was trying to get into my body and take over my body.
Mm.
So I don't know if that was like a dream or not either, but that's happened before. So, I think it's pretty obvious why I have problems sleeping, but
yeah.
And all the suggestions to stop having night terrors and bad dreams is to sleep more. But when you're sleeping in states where all this stuff happens, it's almost impossible to sleep more.
Right. That's just a vicious cycle. You're like, well, I know I need more sleep. I would love more sleep, but every time I sleep, things are trying to just terrorize me.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if this is something that truly is an entity or truly is just Karlee's mind going nuts, But I would be interested to know if someone else maybe have insight on it,
mm-hmm.
or if someone has speculations. Even speculation, something to make you start thinking critically into understanding what might be happening. So, if anyone, any of your listeners, if John Paul, if anyone else has anything to say about it, I would be very interested to know, even if someone has a story that they want to tell me or to you. I think it's important, in any aspect.
Absolutely. And I will definitely pass along any information that I get. And John Paul always listens in, and I know he'll be chiming in on this, and I will let you know the second I get a word from him, Karlee.
Okay.
You mentioned exploding head syndrome, and it's something that Derek talks about all the time on Monsters Among Us, and I think he said himself
mm-hmm.
that he suffers from it or used to suffer from it. I don't know if it's still ongoing for him, but why don't you explain to everybody what that is so that we don't just throw that out there and people are going, what the hell is exploding head syndrome?
Oh, well, your head's not actually exploding, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But actually, Eric was who I learned of what exploding head syndrome was, and I didn't realize, I didn't know that was a thing.
I know, right? Me too. He was the first place that I learned about it too. It's only happened to me a few times, but the second he said what it was, I'm like, oh, it's a thing. Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So it'll be where you're laying in bed about to nod off, and then all of a sudden this really loud sound happens, and it jerks you back awake. So, mine has been with a really loud dog barking into my ear, or someone screaming. It could be it sounds like a car crash happens next to you. So that's what I've gotten from that's what exploding head syndrome is.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's in the room with you. You would swear
mm-hmm.
that
it sounds
either
like it's right next to you.
Yeah. Right next to your noggin while you're trying to sleep, and you're like, what the hell was it? It's terrifying. I think,
and it kind of sends your body into fight mode.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's like an instant adrenaline rush to where you're kind of shaky, and you're like, well, I'll never get back to sleep now, because you're jolted completely awake. It's a horrible feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I think mine was more like if you have the heaviest bookshelf loaded with books, It's like the size of a wall, and it just falls over. Like all of it just falls over.
Oh my
once.
gosh.
And you're just like, that sucks. Of course, at that point you're up and you're like, who's in my house or what's going on? Or I think I've heard Derek say that about his being something like a scream or something, right? If I remember correct.
I think, he did say something about it being like a scream.
That sucks. That's worse. That's way worse than mine. Like you guys' is like, and then bag of nope compared to mine. Like something like crashing, it seems a lot better than a massive dog that you think is next to your head or a person screaming. I'm like, no, not good. Brains,
I
man.
would think that like I have had the dog happen more than any of the other stuff, but it's like this massive dog.
Ugh.
It's just barking as loud as it can, and it's maybe in its alert bark, maybe it's like an anger bark. Yeah.
Sucks either way, though, right?
No, the bookshelf. The bookshelf sounds terrifying, and especially since you're a mother, I would think that you would be like running straight to your. You have a daughter, correct?
Yeah.
You would be, in that mama bear like fight mode, like making sure that nothing is coming after you or your child.
Yeah, it's like instantly, like I will rip your heart out of your chest if you're in here messing with it. Yeah. So, it's more that you just don't know, like, instantly what's going on. Even though it's happened before, I mean, we're kind of, may as well be in a half-drunken, stupor. When you're almost asleep, you're not really all there. Let's just be honest. So, when this happens, it's pretty jarring. So, if anybody's experienced that is what that is, exploding head syndrome. Karlee, I don't know if you wanted to. You don't have to. I can always forward the information, but it's up to you if you wanted to you can throw out your last name if you want to, so people can contact you directly through Facebook or whatever you wanted to do, an email. If not, totally fine. I have no problem forwarding any correspondence that I get.
I don't mind giving people my email address at all. My name is Karlee Pruitt, and my email address is Karlee B. Pruitt, so KarleeB Pruitt @gmail.com. Yeah, and I do really appreciate anyone's input or stories. I mean, because I think I've been able to take a little bit more control over it ever since I started talking about it.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that John Paul had said that he's gotten some tattoos to kind of help him, keep demons away or something. And I've thought about maybe doing a tattoo with like a dream catcher or something.
That's a cool idea. I like that. Yeah.
If there's anything, that could possibly help, because I think sharing and getting information out actually helps people a lot more than what they think. Because bottling it up has not been good for me for these past few years, but now that I'm letting information out, it helps me, I think.
I told him once, I think I said, "Oh, you're like John Constantine. What a badass you are, right? Like with the wrists together and fighting the demons and everything." I'm like, that's amazing. It's...
Oh.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to mention, I actually, when I listened to Pam's interview, when she said that she'd seen where it looks like demons are outside of people and they're like trying to get in, that was the scariest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Isn't that horrible?
And I just want to say to Pam, I'm so sorry you have to see that.
Yeah.
I'd wish upon all measures that she would never have to see that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I think I just was laughing, and it's not funny, but I was just laughing saying that Walmart's bad enough without that. But, she's just going about her daily life. And she's like, there's people with these black as tar things, just small, hanging out of the, I don't know why it's worse that they're small like that. It just creeps me out more. I mean, just depending on various levels of obsession or whatever you want to call it, possession, right? Try to keep in contact with Pam quite a bit, and I think that lately she hasn't really been seeing anything, so that's good, because as you know, she's also seen things around her house. I don't know if that was in the one that aired publicly or the one that aired for insiders only, but on one of them, we were talking, we were doing a recording, and she had to let the dog out. And she said, just a second, I'm not going to talk about these things while the door's open until I get the dog back in. So we actually took a break from talking about them because she just, the door's open, dog's outside, we're going to wait. Dog's going to do his business. Once the door's shut, we can continue talking about these things. But that's how much they affect her.
Yeah, and I had heard that she, on one of the episodes, she had said that she has iron. Is it iron?
Yeah.
That they don't like around her fence property?
Yeah.
Which I think is really smart. I mean, if you are terrified of these things and they do bother you, taking those precautions is actually a really good idea.
Yeah, she's so sweet. She actually sent me a horseshoe and a bunch of books on Irish folklore, and then an iron little nail that you're just supposed to tack up like above your doors, and much like the horseshoe as well. But that was a really cool gift box to get. And yeah, she's somebody that I think I've gotten, and I've said this before, I've gotten so much correspondence about her and her stories and what she's gone through. And I think it's tamped down for her. But see, now, once we get through the summer, we're going to get back into the season when she's probably going to start seeing these things again. They definitely come in the fall and, around Halloween and that time, everything gets a little crazier and the veil gets a little thinner, it seems. So she's not looking forward to that.
Yeah, but oh my goodness, sounds awful. I feel for her.
Well,
anyone else who has to deal with something like that.
I just hope that you guys feel free if you have anything, even a little tiny tidbit, much like Karlee mentioned about the whole lumberjack detail. Even if you guys think, I don't know if, Karlee would relate to my little story at all, give it a shot. You never know, right? Like any little detail might help, like you said, Karlee, in kind of piecing things together. And I do think that talking about it helps, and talking with other people, of course, that have shared these situations could definitely help. I mean, that driving thing, holy smokes, I was not expecting that, Karlee. I'm so sorry. Plus, but I'm so glad that you came forward to tell that.
Thanks so much for letting me come on and talk about this. I mean,
oh, you're welcome.
It's actually one of the coolest things to me right now that I, can come and talk to someone and actually get my story out to other people.
Of course. No, thank you. I couldn't do the show without you guys. I mean, it's all about just getting the word out and going fishing, like I say. It's the only way we're going to learn anything else, even a little tidbit more about this stuff, besides just Googling it, right? And this way we can all kind of share in each other's fears and pains and confusions. But no, thank you, Karlee. Thanks for reaching out to me. And if people don't get a hold of you directly, I will be sure to forward anything I get directly to you. And the second my buddy JP gets a hold of me after he listens to this, I'll make sure to forward you anything I get from him. And maybe at some point, he'd want to chat with you too. He's a really fun, laid back guy. So if it ever came up, I would definitely encourage you to do so.
And yeah, thank you again. I've had a really good time talking to you. I really love your show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, and you enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karlee. Bye-bye.